Good morning. For the record, I'll take a roll call of the board members in attendance. We have Al Carney. Al, you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for present. Forgive me.
John Johnson.
I'm here.
Carol Snyder.
Present.
Wellington Chen.
Yeah, I'm here.
John Gardner.
I am here.
Joan Sullivan.
Here.
Gary Romsky.
Yes, I'm here.
Brian Chesnicki.
Present.
Adrian Swarsky.
Present.
Okay, I will continue to leave most of the participants in the meeting on a muted status. The board members will remain unmuted, and as we move through the portions of the meeting, I will unmute as quickly as I can the appropriate people that will be participating in that particular financing discussion. And with that, Mike, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kim. Following the last regular meeting of the DASNY board on March 4th, 2020, New York Governor Andrew M. Cuomo on March 7th, 2020 declared a disaster emergency in the state of New York due to the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, or COVID-19. Pursuant to Governor Cuomo's subsequent executive order number 202.1, dated March 12, 2020, today's regular meeting of the DASNY Board of Directors is being conducted telephonically. Executive Order 202.1 provides in relevant part that Article 7 of the Public Officers Law, known as the Open Meetings Law, is suspended through April 11, 2020 to the extent necessary to permit any public body to meet and take such actions authorized by the law without permitting in-public, in-person access to meetings and authorizing such meetings to be held remotely by conference call or similar service, provided that the public has the ability to view or listen to such proceeding and that such meetings are recorded and later transcribed. Today's meeting is being conducted in accordance with this authorization. The location of today's telephonic meeting is designated as the DASNY headquarters, located at 515 Broadway in Albany, New York, where I am located. Notice of this meeting has been posted in the standard locations that are publicly accessible. Notice has also been posted prominently on the DASNY.org public website. In accordance with EO 202.1 and the DASNY bylaws, an audio recording of this meeting will be accessible from DASNY's website, www.dasny.org, not later than 2 business days after the close of this meeting. Today's proceedings will also be transcribed and posted as soon thereafter as is reasonable and practicable under the circumstances. Thank you, and I turn the meeting over to the board chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cusack. First of all, welcome to the April meeting of the DASNY board. It rained in New York this morning, in New York City this morning, and it's been raining here for about 6 weeks. This is a terrible time in the history of the city. It's a terrible time in the history of the state. I want to thank you all for your very active participation in this morning's Finance Committee meeting conference call. Thanks for giving DASNY your time and attention during this just impossible time. I've thought about this for several days. It seems to me that the lives of the many who survived this will be affected for the rest of their lives and changed by the lives of those who did not survive this. This is a very, very terrible time. We will go into the agenda now, and the first item behind tab 1, the election of officers. This is generally done in April, annually, at the April meeting. I believe there are a couple, we did this several months ago, I think, but the list has changed, and we need to approve this list again. Are there any questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you. I can't see who's talking, so you're going to.
Oh, Wellington. Sorry.
Thank you,
Al.
Wellington.
This is Wellington.
If you decide to move the approval of the resolution, tell Kim that or maybe Kim, does it show up on your screen?
If somebody raises their hand, I can see that.
It will, but will it help you or whoever's taking the notes on this to have the person moving the resolution actually tell us who they are?
That would be great.
Okay, terrific. Wellington, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it,
Joan
Al.
Sullivan,
Jerry.
second.
Thank you. Jerry, second. Thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 Aye. I think the resolution passes unanimously, but I'm not certain of that. So I'll just assume it does unless somebody wants to oppose it. Behind tab 2, you'll find the minutes of the March 4th board meeting. Are there any proposed revisions, changes? Are there things we need to look at in the minutes? I'd like to think that everybody's happy with them. Hearing no comments, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the March 4 meeting?
Joan Sullivan, motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I'll
Is there a second?
second it. This is Beryl.
Thank you, Beryl. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, great. We had a long and very interesting Finance Committee meeting this morning. The Finance Chair is going to present the matters that we discussed in the meeting. Mr. Wronski.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we adopted the meeting minutes from the March 3rd meeting. Then we proceeded to advance to discuss, after going into executive session, a number of matters, including the two matters relating to the state, which was the PIT note financing, as also the line of credit financing, both of which have been driven by the COVID-19 crisis. We agreed that they should be adopted at today's board meeting. We then advanced to discuss Memorial Sloan Kettering, the school district revenue bond financing, Toro College, and 2 TUB financings, and we recommend that they all be advanced at today's board meeting. And unless anyone has questions or concerns, that concludes my report from finance. I will note it was one of the longest finance meetings, but we did get through it. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone else for participating.
Again, thank you all for being there this morning. As I said earlier, we missed Tracy Raleigh, who was called into a COVID-19 series of meetings today, or she would have been there. I'm going to ask, before, Ruben, you start, it's the President's report that's next on the agenda, that because the board members have all heard the presentations as a part of the Finance Committee meeting, if you have questions or comments, please don't hesitate to ask them. But I'm going to ask that the staff folk who are presenting be brief as well, if the board wants to hear or has questions for whoever it was, the presenter on staff. I'm also going to apologize in advance to the bond counsel who are present. I think it's important that you tell us about the bond counsel letters that we have in place here. I've read them all, and I'm sure Jerry has as well. But I would ask you to keep your presentations short. We need to hear what you have to say, but if you can be brief, we would all be grateful. And with that, Mr. President, if you would begin your report, I'd be very grateful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Just a sound check. Everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. As the chairman said, it has been a very, very difficult time since our last meeting, and no need to go over that generally, but I do have quite a few comments I want to make. Also, just for ease of presentation and efficiency, I'm going to give the construction for public finance, council, and finance updates although all members of staff are on the call if someone has a specific question. But hopefully we can go through this fairly quickly. First, the governor and legislature did in fact pass the budget on April the 3rd. And while that was difficult to do given the uncertainty around the financials of the state and the impact of the virus, they did pass a balanced budget. They have put into the budget some mechanisms for making adjustments as things become more clear. As we talked about the Finance Committee, we'll talk about it later, there are 2 transactions in the budget that are affect us from DASNY's perspective to do short-term borrowing to assist the state with their cash flow needs. Another bill that was passed that is important to DASNY, and quite frankly in this environment it's been kind of under the radar, is they did approve our ability to use the design build methodology across our construction projects if the projects are appropriate. This increases the efficiency and cost effectiveness. I know we've talked about design build before and use it on a limited basis, but this bill actually gave us expanded authority on design build. So we're very appreciative of that. Next is to talk about kind of what DASNY's response has been to COVID-19 and bring the board members up to speed. First and most importantly, we have 3 employees who have tested positive for COVID-19. Our latest report is that all 3 employees are doing better on the mend. None of them are what one would call 100% bill of health, but they're all at home and recovering. One has a family member who's also recovering, and so they're in our thoughts and prayers always. But given we have a staff of 500 plus, so far, we have been blessed to only have 3, and those 3, again, seem to be on the mend. So first and foremost, we feel good about that. Second is, we really have been able to get all of our non-essential employees working from home. And so as a practical matter, the New York City office has been closed for the past 3.5 weeks. No one has gone into that office except for early on to pick up some mail. All the mail coming to New York is forwarded to Albany. That office has been closed. All those employees who typically report to New York were relocated to their house and are working remotely from home. In Albany, the majority of our workforce is working from home. We have on occasion during the week people come in to check the mail, to pick up documents that they may need to do their work that are paper documents and aren't useful to do electronically. And once or twice a week, some subset of our finance staff comes in to do check runs and such. But for the most part, our Albany office is closed. We have been very clear with our employees that if they feel the least bit sick, not to come in at all. And again, just a limited number of employees on a very specific shift come in to check the specific issues that we need. So we have the IS department did a great job of getting everybody in the organization up and running from home. A lot of people, as you can imagine, have laptops and tablets and such. We also have a lot of our employees who are using their home computers with a GoToMyPC linkage. And then we distributed probably 20 to 25 laptops to people who would typically work from the desktop of the office and needed that at home. We've also set up a lot of technology functionality where the groups can communicate via chat on a Teams platform, and managers and supervisors are having weekly and bi-weekly calls, some of those via video. I've had a chance to participate in a lot of different groups, and so a lot of the work and function that we can do at DASNY has continued to do as people work remotely. Clearly not as efficient as it is to have people in the office, but the team has really stepped up, and I can't say enough about both the leadership as well as, from the first down to the 500 and whatever employee, everyone's done a really great job of transitioning and, really being as productive as possible. On the public finance and portfolio monitoring side, we have 2 financings on today for the state. We also have several other individual financings that are on a day-to-day basis that have been approved prior. And as we will go through a couple of new financings, the public finance team has done a great job of continuing those forward in fairly uncertain times. From a market update perspective, as it relates to our public finance activity, when we last spoke a month ago, the market seemed in a reasonable place. That has all changed and has gone up and down and been very volatile over the past 3 to 4 weeks. The biggest impact has been that the municipal bond funds that are the buyers of a lot of the bonds that we issue over the past, kind of before the virus, over the past 60 plus weeks, had inflows of money from investors who were looking to invest in municipal bonds. And that really helped buoy the market for a long period of time. Well, beginning in early March, that changed and the outflows have been significant and historic in proportion as investors turn to cash to cover losses from other investments on the stock market that are going down, cash to cover expenses around losing jobs, and generally just a fear that anything other than the most stable and secure of investments was not appropriate. And so we saw a big move out of the bond funds, which has really impacted our market in a negative basis. The Federal Reserve has implemented some short-term buying help that has helped stabilize the short end of the market. On the longer-term part of the market, there still is a difficulty getting transactions done. Over the past 2 weeks, there have been a few transactions in the smaller end that have come to market, but there have been no significant transactions that have been in the market. The stimulus package that was passed by Congress does have in it some assistance for municipal governments on the long end of the tax-exempt market. They've hired a gentleman who most of us in the industry know. He worked on the Puerto Rico bailout, and he is helping determine the programs that will be used to leverage and help the longer-term market. We expect literally any day now to get some clarity on those programs, and hopefully that will help free up the mid and long end of the municipal market. But at this time, all of the financings that we have approved that have not come to market and or the financings you approved today will certainly go into a day-to-day status. And as the market opens up, then we will bring those to market. But at this point, it's very, very difficult. But the market has been very, very volatile, to say the least. On the construction side, as many of you following this know, all non-essential construction in the state was closed down. And so at this point, DASNY probably has, let's just call it 20% of the work we would typically do. We're continuing on, but most of it has been closed down. Most of CUNY is shut down. SUNY has a couple of small programs that have been restarted, and they're trying to get their summer dorm program in a good place, but it's certainly been limited. OPWDD is completely shut down. Our Office of Mental Health work is in fact continuing. And so we do have employees who work in the field and are going to field sites, but for the most part, our construction program is on pause as far as the physical construction goes. Of course, the design and other projects that people can do in the office from a planning perspective, they are doing from home and communicating back and forth with supervisors and being productive in that way. On procurement, we are moving ahead. We certainly have some requests for proposals and bid openings that are out. We have made arrangements legally to do our bid openings, and so we're doing that on a consistent basis. Paul and Steve coming to the office and do those with the support staff. The vendor payments and employee payroll have continued to be processed timely. Kim and her team have done a lot of work on making sure that from a cash and cash flow perspective, we are covered. Kim Ellis and Jeff Arnold on the budget side have done a good job of projecting out what our forecasts are. And Paul, Caroline, and I have been communicating with both sides of that to make sure that in this time we are prepared for, hope for the best, as Forrester likes to say, and prepare for the worst. And so we are monitoring that on a very, very close basis. On the general counsel side, yes,
I'm sorry. Maybe there are questions. Thank you very much. This is very concise and actually a very important report. But might there be questions? Would you take questions now, or would you rather take them at the end of the report?
Well, actually, let's take them now. I've got a few more things to say, but actually it'd be a good time to take questions now. And my closing remarks I will go through fairly quickly.
So are there questions for Ruben? He's done the market update, he's done the construction update, he's done procurement, and the impact of COVID-19 on all of those things. If you've got questions, he I'm sure will be happy to answer them.
Al, this is Joan Sullivan. I just have a quick question. What's the impact of the move in New York City? Has that all been put on hold as well? Because I assume construction has ceased for the time being.
So we are monitoring that, and we have had conversations with the landlord. You are correct. There will be a delay. They have done the drawings, but at this point, getting bids and construction bids and such are impossible, if not difficult. So we don't have a specific solution for that yet. We're hopeful that later this month we'll have a better sense from our new landlord as to when we might be able to move forward. At this time, we can speak to our old landlord about either extending our current lease. They don't have anybody who's chomping at the bit to get into that office. We've also talked internally about if, in fact, this is an extended delay, considering having the work from home solution be something that helps us from a cost perspective, bridge a couple of months if we need to. So we're monitoring it, but you're absolutely right. At this point, the build out of our new space has been put on hold until the construction freeze lifts, at which point we'll have a better sense of how that impacts our move-in date. But clearly, there will be a delay.
Thank you.
Ruben, thank you for that. Are there other questions for Ruben at this point in his presentation? Please, Ruben, continue.
Great. So I want to move on to just a couple other things that I think are in a difficult time, more positive notes. You should know that several DASNY employees have been called in to assist other state agencies. As a couple examples of this, we had a senior project manager who not oversaw is too strong of a term, who was helping the Department of Health in the participation in the Javits Center conversion. And so we had somebody on site there who was monitoring what was going on and reporting back to DOH if they saw issues or problems or concerns, or if the people on the ground there as they implemented had questions that needed to go up to the state. We had someone there with construction experience. We also have a senior project manager at the SUNY Old Westbury campus that's being converted. You've probably seen some of that. And we've talked a lot over the past year or two about the South Beach Psychiatric Center that was actually set to open about 2 weeks ago. That has been converted to a COVID-only hospital facility for the time being. And so, we are very integral in making the changes to that facility. And I believe today or tomorrow, they will be accepting their first patient. So we've been working very hard on that. We had over 40 DASNY professionals who volunteered to help staff the state COVID-19 health center to respond to questions and concerns from the public. early in the process, the Health Center lines were, hour to 2 hour wait time. And so they made a call for volunteers, and 40 plus of the DASNY professionals stepped up. And so that was great. Mike and his team have been asked several times to assist with the Department of Health and others in some legal matters that have come up, and really just helping with overflow. Caroline's been helping on the second floor and over the Department of Health. Jeffrey Gordon has been asked to help with some of the PR initiatives, and clearly from a financing perspective, portion of our team have been integrally involved in some of those pieces. So I think it's just a testament again to our organization that people have stepped up. The governor's office sees us as a good resource, and we'll continue to do that during this difficult period. One of the things that I implemented right before we all left was I have created an Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And what I want to do with that is really help provide guidance both with our current staff and our recruiting and policies to make DASNY a great place to work for everyone. Michael Johnson, who was formerly Assistant General Counsel, has agreed to be our first Director of Diversity and Inclusion. And although he has been working from home since appointed, he has generated a lot of information for us. He's been talking with HR quite a bit, and I'm excited about how this will work for us going forward as we all come back to a more normal assignment. And then additionally, we established a new Department of Administration and Executive Direction. Kim Ellis will be heading that department and reporting directly into Paul Koopman. She will oversee budget, operations, building services, payroll, internal control, processes and procedures, business continuity, and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And Jeff Arnold will move over under her to be Director of Budget and Operations, and that will include the oversight of building services. We've had several retirements on the operations side that have given us the opportunity to consider reorganizing, and senior management spent some time on kind of what would be the best structure going forward. And we agreed this was a great structure. And Kim Ellis has been a rising star at DASNY for a long time, so it gives her the opportunity to move into a very senior position, and I look forward to her leadership. Again, this was announced right as we were leaving office, but she and Jeff, among many, many others, have been very responsive and very helpful, and really done a great job under difficult times in making that transition. So with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report. I do want to just thank all the board members for their participation today. We recognize that telephone has been difficult. I can tell you that we've had a lot of online meetings, a lot of teleconferences, and while it has been cumbersome, just like our meetings have been, this meeting has been cumbersome, it is effective and done the best that we have to do.
Ruben, thank you very much. There are a lot of things I guess I could say now. All would be laudatory. You've accomplished a great deal in a very, very short time. So the thing I will say is we are grateful, the board is grateful for your leadership. Thank you for all you're doing for the organization. Now, we're going to introduce you're going to introduce each of the financings?
Yes.
Okay, please do.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's get to the right tab here in my list. I apologize. So the first transaction will be under our single approval financings. And the first one will be under the revised agenda is the personal income tax note financing. And the staff will present the following. Portia Lee will give the introduction and staff remarks, and then bond counsel Cam Wong of Hawkins Delafield will give the bond counsel piece. Portia?
Okay. Thank you very much, Ruben. So by way of background, the coronavirus is having a significant impact on the health and welfare of individuals in the state, as well as a significant financial impact on the state. The impact on the state includes a temporary cash flow shortfall as a result of the federal government's decision to extend the personal income tax filing deadline from April 15th to July 15th, and the corresponding extension of the state's tax filing deadline. As a result, less revenues are coming into the state at this time. And at the same time, the state's response to the coronavirus is well underway, and the state is spending significant sums to battle the virus. Under recently enacted legislation contained in the budget, DASNY is authorized to issue revenue anticipation notes and bond anticipation notes under the personal income tax program until December 31st, 2020, to provide working capital to enable the state to meet its fiscal management needs in fiscal year 2021. So the board is being asked to authorize the issuance of one or more series of tax-exempt and/or taxable, fixed and/or variable rate revenue anticipation notes at one or more times in an amount not to exceed $8 billion with an initial maturity of no later than March 31st, 2021 under the personal income tax program for this purpose. The notes may be sold on a competitive or negotiated basis or combinations of both under the personal income tax program. The legislation authorizes the financing of these cash flow needs as an authorized purpose under the PIT program. The notes will be payable pursuant to the financing agreement between DASNY and the State Division of Budget from the same revenues as personal income tax bonds, that is 50% of the receipts from New York State personal income taxes and 50% of the receipts from employer compensation expense taxes deposited into the Revenue Bond Tax Fund. Pursuant to the PIT subordinate bond resolution, the lien on such receipts and payments made pursuant to the financing agreement for PIT notes is subordinate to the lien associated with PIT bonds. The notes may be renewed or refunded for a period of 1 additional year from the date of such renewal or refunding. Under the legislation, the notes may also be taken out long-term with the issuance of PIT bonds. It's expected that these notes will be issued with a fixed rate on a tax-exempt basis in one or more negotiated transactions. The issuance of these notes will not be subject to the limitations and requirements contained in the Debt Reform Act of 2000. Staff requests that the board authorize and adopt the necessary documents for the issuance of one or more series of tax-exempt and/or taxable, fixed and/or variable rate notes to be issued at one or more times. This transaction qualifies as a single approval because it's a transaction for one of DASNY's public programs, which is already in DASNY's portfolio and for which notes are issued pursuant to a previously adopted general resolution. I would turn it over to Bond Counsel Cam Wong from Hawkins.
Thanks, Portia. Good morning, members of the board. I'm speaking today on behalf of my law firm, Hawkins Delafield, and also for our co-bond counsel, the law firm of Golden, Harley, and James. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to participate in the efforts to alleviate the financial difficulties the state is facing as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. At the request of the chairman, I'm going to cut my presentation significantly. Originally it was scheduled for 12 minutes, but I'm going to cut it down to about maybe 7 or 8. There will be three resolutions. Sure. There are 3 resolutions for your consideration. The first is the Personal Income Tax or PIT Subordinate Bond Resolution. This resolution provides for the issuance of subordinate bonds, subordinate tax revenue notes, and subordinate bond anticipation notes. I will discuss this resolution in more detail. The second is the PIT Subordinate Supplemental Resolution. This supplemental resolution authorizes the issuance of subordinate tax revenue anticipation notes in an amount not to exceed $8 billion, and also authorizes the issuance of renewal or refunding notes. I will also discuss this resolution in more detail. The third is a resolution declaring the intent to reimburse from proceeds of tax-exempt bonds the capital expenditures and extraordinary working capital expenditures incurred prior to the issuance of such bonds. These expenditures are not expected to be financed from proceeds of the notes I just mentioned. As described in Mike Cusack's letter to the board, this resolution does not obligate DASNY to issue such bonds. Any bonds that are subsequently authorized to be issued may not exceed $1 billion. I will now discuss the legislation that was mentioned by Portia. The legislation authorizes DASNY to issue one or more series of revenue anticipation notes or bond anticipation notes and renewal and refunding notes on a subordinated basis under the personal income tax bond program. The maximum amount authorized by the legislation is $8 billion. As Portia mentioned, the notes are to be issued to finance the temporary shortfall of the state resulting from the deferral of the federal income tax payment to July 15, 2020 in response to the COVID-19 health and financial crisis. Legislation expressly provides that the financing of such working capital needs of the state constitutes an authorized purpose for purposes of Article 5C of the State Finance Law. Such Article 5C is known as the PIT Enabling Act. The notes authorized by the legislation will be issued pursuant to the PIT Enabling Act and will be secured on a subordinated basis by payments from the Revenue Bond Tax Fund. I will now discuss the PIT Subordinate Bond Resolution. The terms and provisions of the PIT Subordinate Bond Resolution are very similar to the terms and provisions of the PIT General Purpose Bond Resolution adopted by the Board in 2009, except for applicable pledge, security, and priority provisions. To avoid confusion, I will refer to the bond resolution adopted in 2009 as the Senior Bond Resolution. The PIT Subordinate Bond Resolution will constitute an agreement between DASNY and holders of the notes and bonds issued pursuant thereto. The PIT Subordinate Bond Resolution also provides for the issuance from time to time of multiple series or subordinate notes and subordinate bonds pursuant to supplemental resolutions adopted by DASNY from time to time. DASNY entered into a financing agreement with the Director of the Division of the Budget in 2009 to provide for the payment by the state of debt service on PIT bonds and other obligations issued pursuant to the Senior Bond Resolution. The PIT financing agreement expressly provides for payment by the state of debt service on any subordinated indebtedness issued under the Senior Bond Resolution and will govern payment of debt service on all subordinate notes and bonds issued pursuant to the PIT Subordinate Bond Resolution. All subordinate PIT notes and bonds issued under the PIT Subordinate Bond Resolution are special obligations of DASNY secured by subordinate payments from payments to be received by DASNY under the PIT financing agreement. Such payments, as Portia mentioned, are derived from personal income tax receipts and certain other funds and accounts to be held under the PIT Subordinate Bond Resolution. I will now discuss Supplemental Resolution Number 1. In conformance with the legislation, Supplemental Resolution Number 1 authorizes the issuance of tax revenue anticipation notes in one or more series at one or more times on or prior to December 31, 2020, and maturing no later than March 31, 2021, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $8 billion. In conformance with the legislation, Supplemental Resolution Number 1 also provides that all or a portion of such notes may be renewed or refunded with proceeds of refunding notes with a maturity not exceeding 1 year from the date of such renewal or refunding. Supplemental Resolution Number 1 delegates to various officers of DASNY the power, among others, to determine in each case, subject to the limitations described above, the principal amount and specific details of the authorized notes and the manner in which such notes ought to be sold. Supplemental Resolution Number 1 also authorizes various officers of DASNY to execute and deliver whatever documents and do all things necessary, convenient, or desirable in connection with the sale and issuance of the notes. I was going to discuss the details of the financing agreement, but Portia has already discussed that. So I'm just going to jump to the state financing agreements provides that the state's obligation to make payments under the PIT financing agreement are subject to annual appropriation by the state legislature of money for such purpose. The obligation of the state to make payments under the PIT financing agreement does not constitute a debt of the state within the meaning of any constitutional or statutory provision and would be deemed executory only to the extent that monies are available for such payments. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Cam, thank you very much. Members, are there questions for Portia and or Cam? Hearing none, then, what I'd like to do is to vote, to take one vote on all the resolutions, unless there's an objection from any member. Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolutions necessary to implement the intent of this financing?
This is Wellington. So moved.
Thank you, Wellington. Is there a second?
Yes.
John Sullivan,
John
second.
Jimison, I second it.
Joan, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think the motion carries unanimously. Cam, Portia, thank you both.
And for purposes of the audio recording, Mr. Chairman, we can note after each resolution whether anyone is opposed, and if not, it'll be deemed unanimous, since we don't have video.
Thank you. Thank you.
Got it.
Great suggestion, Mike. Thank you. Mr. President?
Mr. Chairman, the next financing on the item is the second aspect on the revised agenda is a line or lines of credit financing. Portia Lee will present this from the staff perspective, and Doron Bar-Levav of Harris Beach will give the bond counsel discussion. Portia?
Thank you very much, Ruben. So the line of credit financing was also authorized under the recently enacted legislation in the budget to address the state's budgetary needs that I highlighted earlier in connection with the PIT note financing. DASNY is authorized to negotiate on behalf of the state and enter into line of credit facilities with financial institutions in order to provide temporary liquidity to the state. The board is being asked to authorize DASNY to enter into one or more lines of credit with financial institutions in an aggregate principal amount outstanding at any one time not to exceed $3 billion for a term of up to 1 year. The lines of credit are being entered into in order to provide working capital to enable the state to meet its fiscal management needs in fiscal year 2021. DASNY is authorized to, at the direction of the Director of Budget, draw down amounts available under the lines at one or more times during fiscal year 2021 for deposit into the general fund. The lines of credit will be secured by a state service contract. Payments made by the state under the service contract will be pledged by DASNY for any related payment obligation to the banks. The state service contract is backed by an appropriation by the state legislature sufficient to provide for the repayment of all amounts authorized to be drawn from such lines of credit. DASNY will have no liability for the repayment of draws under such credit facilities other than from payments received under the state service contract. The line or lines of credit may be subject to extension or renewal for up to 2 additional 1-year terms. Under the legislation, any borrowings under the line of credit facilities are authorized to be refinanced on a long-term basis with state PIT bonds or state service contract bonds. The line or lines of credit will not be subject to the limitations and requirements contained in the Debt Reform Act of 2000. Staff is requesting that the board authorize and adopt the necessary authorizing resolution to enter into one or more lines of credit. In light of the challenges associated with the coronavirus, staff is also requesting that the board adopt the authorizing resolution as an exception to its single approval guidelines. I'll turn over the presentation now to Counsel Doron Barlavov from Harris Beach.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Portia.
Doron.
Thank you. Good morning. Before you for your consideration is the adoption of a resolution authorizing DASNY to enter into one or more lines of credit facilities with one or more financial institutions pursuant to recently enacted legislation that assists the state of New York to address its expected temporary cash flow shortfall caused by the deferral of federal and state income tax filing and payment deadlines in response to the impact of the COVID-19 disease. The new legislation also authorizes DASNY to secure repayment of such line of credit draws from amounts payable by the state under one or more service contracts between the state and DASNY. Our firm, Harris Beach, and the McGlashan Law Firm will be working together as co-bond counsel in connection with the line of credit financing. The new legislation authorizes DASNY during the state's 2021 fiscal year to enter into commitments with financial institutions for the establishment of one or more lines of credit and other similar revolving financing arrangements, providing for up to $3 billion in aggregate principal amount to be drawn and outstanding at any one time. It also permits permits the authority to draw at one or more times at the direction of the director of the budget upon such line of credit facilities and to provide to the state the amount so drawn for the purpose of assisting the state to temporarily finance its budgetary needs. And finally, to secure the repayment for such line of credit draws with amounts payable under one or more service contracts. The maximum original term of any line of credit facility shall be 1 year from the date of incurrence, and each line of credit facility may be extended, renewed, or refinanced for up to 2 additional 1-year terms. The line of credit facilities are each expected to provide for interest on draws to accrue on a variable rate basis using a LIBOR or other short-term benchmark. It is expected that the line of credit documents will take the form of standard bank loan documents with negotiated provisions. The new legislation further authorizes the state to enter into one or more service contracts with DASNY, pursuant to which the state will agree to make payments to DASNY at the times and in necessary amounts to enable DASNY to repay all draws under such line of credit facilities, together with interest thereon. Under the new legislation, DASNY will not have any financial liability for the repayment of draws under any line of credit facilities beyond the monies received for such purpose from the state under the service contract. Also pursuant to the new legislation, DASNY is authorized to enter into the line of credit facilities notwithstanding any other provision of law to the contrary, including specifically the provisions of the Debt Reform Act of 2000. I'll now describe the authorizing resolution. The authorizing resolution is intended to implement the authority granted to DASNY under the new legislation to undertake the line of credit financing. It specifically authorizes DASNY to establish with financial institutions one or more line of credit facilities providing for up to $3 billion in aggregate principal amount to be drawn and outstanding at any one time, to draw on the lines of credit at one or more times at the direction of the Director of Budget, and to provide the amount so drawn to the state for deposit to the credit of the state's general fund. The authorizing resolution also authorizes DASNY to enter into the service contract with the state to secure repayment of line of credit facility draws with amounts payable under the service contract. The authorizing resolution delegates to authorized officers the power to determine the matters described in my bond counsel letter, such as the number and identity of the financial institutions to enter into the line of credit facilities, the respective amounts of each line of credit facility, the terms and interest rates or interest rate formulas, and bank fees and costs for each line of credit facility, and to execute and deliver applicable documents and to do all things necessary, convenient, or desirable in connection therewith. In the event the state desires to refinance all or a portion of any outstanding line of credit facility on a long-term basis, the members of DASNY will be requested to approve the issuance of one or more series of state personal income tax revenue bonds or state service contract bonds at such time. A short description of the service contract. The service contract obligates the Division of Budget to make payments at such times and such amounts necessary to repay all the principal of all draws, together with interest thereon, made under the line of credit facilities. Payments made by the state to DASNY pursuant to the service contract are expected to be pledged as security for DASNY's repayment obligations under the line of credit facilities. The Division of Budget has advised DASNY that the state legislature has enacted sufficient appropriation authority to provide for the repayment of all amounts expected to be drawn by DASNY under all line of credit facilities established during fiscal year 2021. The service contract expressly provides that the state's obligation to make the payments under the service contract shall not constitute a debt of the state within the meaning of any constitutional or statutory provision, and that no liability shall be incurred by the state beyond the monies annually appropriated and available for payment. If, however, appropriations are made and money is available, the state will be legally obligated to make the payments required under the service contract. Finally, the new legislation limits the service contract to a maximum duration of 30 years. This concludes my presentation to the members of the board. Thank you.
Duran, thank you. Portia, thank you. Are there questions for Portia and or Duran? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction?
John Johnson, I approve it.
I heard Beryl. I don't know who else I might have heard. Is there a second?
John Johnson,
second.
Wellington.
You got it, Al.
John Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, then the motion's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 I think we have unanimity. I'll just rely on the minutes to know that. Thank you all very much. I didn't ask whether or not anybody from Golden Holly James was on the phone, or whether Patrick might have been on the phone from McGlashan.
Al, we do have some, everybody's on mute. We do have we do have Natalie here from Golden Holly James. Would you like?
Okay. No. I just wondered whether or not Robert had made sure that there was somebody in the room. Thank you. In the virtual room.
Yeah.
There's a lovely Cezanne in this virtual room. Lovely. Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, behind tab 5 is the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center single approval transaction summary and staff report. DASNY's Matt Bergen will be doing the reporting for DASNY with co-bond counsel Eileen Heitzler of Orrick Harrington and Justine Morose of Morose Law Group. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, everyone. The staff report provided to the members presents a 40-year term for a bond issue in an amount not to exceed $400 million on behalf of Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And as noted in the materials, the bonds may be issued in one or more series at one or more times, and the bonds may be issued as fixed and or variable rate bonds, as well as either tax-exempt and or taxable bonds. The bonds may also be issued through a negotiated offering, a competitive basis, and/or a private placement. The projects that you're considering this morning include a portion of the costs that were used to construct the David H. Koch Center for Cancer Care, which is at East 74th Street. And in addition, the proposed bond issue will finance equipment purchases at various locations. The security features will include a general obligation of the Center Corporation, guarantees from Sloan Kettering Institute for Cancer Research and SKI Realty, Inc. The expected ratings are AA3, AA-, and AA. And regarding Memorial Sloan Kettering, this is a multi-billion-dollar corporation with nearly $10.8 billion in total assets, nearly $3.9 billion in total liabilities, and over $6.9 billion in total net assets. And Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would like to hand over the presentation to Eileen Heitzler.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, Eileen.
Hi, and thank you all. Ora Carrington Sutcliffe and Morose Law Group are co-bond counsel for the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center transaction. I will describe the plan of finance and security for the bonds, and Justine Morose will describe the terms of the proposed Series 2020 bonds. MSKCC has requested that DASNY issue bonds to finance all or a portion of the projects that Matt just mentioned. The bonds will be issued under a general resolution that was adopted by DASNY in 2003. There's been several series of bonds issued under that resolution so far, and they are all on a parity basis. 3 series resolutions are proposed to be adopted in order to allow the flexibility for the different types of issuances and timing that Matt just described. The proceeds will be lent to the Cancer Center pursuant to a 2003 loan agreement. The loan agreement provides that the obligations to make loan repayments and other payments are general obligations of the center. The center's obligations under the loan agreement are then secured by guarantees of payment by Sloan Kettering Institute for Cancer Research and SKI Realty, Inc., which are 2 not-for-profit corporations that are affiliated with the center. Memorial Hospital, which is another not-for-profit corporation affiliated with the center, does not guarantee the center's obligations. Instead, Memorial Hospital executed an inducement agreement pursuant to which it agrees to be bound by certain covenants and provide certain collateral upon a funding event. The loan agreement, guarantees, and inducement agreement are currently all unsecured obligations of the applicable parties. However, upon the occurrence of a funding event, certain collateral is required to be posted for the joint benefit of bonds issued under the 2003 resolution, for the benefit of certain bonds issued under a 2001 resolution by DASNY, under taxable bond indentures of the Cancer Center, and under an indenture relating to certain New Jersey Economic Development Authority bonds. Actions of the trustees or the holders of the various bonds are governed by an intercreditor agreement with respect to this collateral. The shared collateral includes mortgages on all property other than MSKCC's research center and the pledge of gross operating revenues of related entities other than the hospital. Additionally, the documents provide for a springing lien on the research property solely for the benefit of bonds issued under the 2003 resolution. However, an amendment to the loan agreement that was authorized and executed in connection with the authority's MSKCC bonds that were issued in 2019 eliminates this springing lien on the research property so as to homogenize the security package among all the different bond deals that I mentioned before, with the exception that the bonds issued under the 01 resolution would continue to have a separate springing lien on certain hospital revenues. This amendment to eliminate the springing lien on the research center property will not become effective until all bonds issued prior to 2019 under the 03 resolution have been paid or defeased. So again, the security package is, the bonds are unsecured right now with the agreement that if certain funding events were to occur, there would then be this springing lien on the security package I described. Justine is now going to describe the terms of the Series 2020 bonds. And just one mention, this is all the same. These bonds are, the security package is the same as what was approved in 2019. And Justine, with that, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you, Eileen. Good afternoon.
Welcome.
As previously mentioned,
welcome.
Yes, thank you. As previously mentioned, the proposed series resolutions authorize the issuance of up to $400 million of authorized bonds from the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center Revenue Bond Resolution adopted in 2003, provided that no bond matures later than 40 years. The true interest cost on the bonds issued at tax-exempt fixed-rate bonds and the initial interest rate on the bonds issued at tax-exempt variable rate bonds shall not exceed 7.5%, and the true interest cost on the bonds issued as federally taxable fixed-rate bonds and the initial interest rate on the bonds issued as federally taxable variable rate interest rate bonds shall not exceed 10%. The series resolutions authorize bonds to be offered to the public through either a negotiated sale to the underwriters or a direct sale to one or more investors in limited or private placement on terms negotiated directly with the purchasers. The series resolutions also authorize DASNY officers to 1, prepare, execute, and deliver preliminary and final official statements, 2, execute bond purchase agreements, and 3, execute all other necessary documents for the sale and issuance of the authorized bonds. The bonds will be special obligations of DASNY. Payments made to DASNY from the center pursuant to the loan agreement will be used to make timely payments of the principal, sinking fund installments, and interest on all bonds outstanding under the general resolution. Per the center's desire, we hereby request that DASNY adopt 3 series resolutions to be issued as tax-exempt or taxable bonds offered to the public through negotiated sale to underwriters, sold competitively, or sold directly to investors in a private placement. We'll take questions now.
Thank you all very much. Are there questions for Eileen or Justine? I'm curious, Eileen, what would be an example of a funding event that would thereby create security?
There are various coverage covenants that, if they were to be not met, would trigger the funding event.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there questions, again, for Eileen or Justine? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction?
You got it, Al. Jerry.
Jerry, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Joan Sullivan, second.
Thank you very, very much, Joan. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 We will assume the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President. Ruben, tab 6.
Oh, I had a great conversation with myself on mute. I apologize. Behind tab 6 is the school district revenue bond financing program single approval transaction. The staff report will be done by Dave Ostrander. You recall we've looked at this last month, and so no bond counsel will be on this call. Dave?
He's having a conversation with himself, too.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I was. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, good afternoon, David.
I'll start again. So back on March 4th, the board authorized and adopted the necessary documents for the issuance of bonds on behalf of various New York State school districts. Staff requested an amount not to exceed $500 million, which was expected to be sufficient to accommodate a June new money and banner refinancing pool based on school district demand at that time. At that time, staff had received interest from approximately 30 districts totaling less than $300 million. Due to the recent disruption in the municipal bond market, a sharp rise in interest rates in the weeks following the board approval, along with continued volatility in the market, has resulted in increased demand from school districts to participate in the DASNY pool. So to date, staff has now received responses from nearly 60 districts who wish to participate. And based on the current financing needs of those districts, the total par amount of bonds is now likely to exceed $500 million. So to accommodate the current demand for a June 2020 pool, staff is recommending that the board authorize the necessary amendments to the documents adopted at the March 4th board meeting to increase the not to exceed amount from $500 million to $750 million. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. Are there questions for David? There being none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction?
Brian Checkinsey, so moved.
Brian, thank you very much. And the second?
Second, Joan Sullivan.
Joan, thank you again. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. It sounds like unanimity to me. Mr. President.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir, we're at tab 7.
Behind tab 7 is the St. Lawrence Lewis County BOCES transaction. We will have a summary update with bond counsel Seth Bryant. Or Bryant Rubino.
Seth, how are you?
I'm well, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Very good. Very good. Thank you for the opportunity to present. Today, the members of the authority are being asked to consider and, in the board's discretion, adopt 2 identical series resolutions for up to $43 million each in the aggregate of Master BOCES Program Lease Refunding Revenue Bonds, St. Lawrence Lewis issue, Series 2020A and Series 2020B, which, if adopted, would be issued on behalf of the Board of Cooperative Educational Services of the Sole Supervisory District of St. Lawrence Lewis Counties under DASNY's Master BOCES Program Lease Revenue Bond Resolution. The Series 2020 bonds are proposed to be sold to Roosevelt and Cross pursuant to a standard bond purchase agreement. If approved, each series resolution authorizes bonds to finance the acquisition, construction, renovation, repair, and/or equipping of various facilities of the St. Lawrence Lewis BOCES, including but not limited to the Seaway Career and Technical Educational Center in Norwood, New York, the Southwest Career and Technical Education Center in Fowler, New York, and the Northwest Career and Technical Education Center in Ogdensburg, New York. They would also approve the funding of the Debt Service Reserve Fund in order to pay the cost of acquiring a reserve fund facility with respect to such Series 2020 bonds, to pay the cost of a policy of municipal bond insurance, if any, with respect to such Series 2020 bonds, and to pay all or a portion of the cost of issuance of such Series 2020 bonds. Under Section 1689 of the Dormitory Authority Act, DASNY is permitted to enter into 2 separate agreements of lease and 2 lease and agreements with the BOCES with respect to each series of 2020 bonds and the specific facilities financed thereby. Pursuant to each agreement of lease, the BOCES will lease such facility to DASNY for nominal rent, and DASNY will then lease such facility back to the BOCES. Under the Act, and under a memorandum of understanding among DASNY, the New York State Education Department, and the Office of the State Comptroller, DASNY shall file a certificate annually with the Commissioner of Education stating all amounts due from the BOCES to DASNY under the applicable lease and agreement. Upon receipt of a certification from the Commissioner of Education, the State Comptroller is required to deduct the amount certified by the Commissioner as due to DASNY from the state aid otherwise payable to the BOCES and pay that amount directly to DASNY. If the state aid is insufficient, the BOCES will remain obligated to pay such rent, which rent payments are structured to meet debt service requirements of the Series 2020 bonds. The Series 2020 bonds will be special obligations of DASNY, payable solely out of the revenues and the monies and investments held in the funds and accounts established by the respective Series 2020 resolutions, other than any monies and investments held in the Arbitrage Rebate Fund. Payment of the respective series of 2020 bonds is secured by the pledge and assignment made by the general resolution of the revenues, certain monies and investments, including a debt service reserve fund held under the general resolution, and DASNY's right thereto. The pledge and assignment of the Series 2028 bonds shall be subordinate to the pledge and assignment made by BOCES in order to secure outstanding bonds issued prior to the Series 2020 bonds. And the pledge and assignment related to the Series 2020B bonds will also be subordinate to those DASNY bonds that were issued prior thereto.
Okay.
With that, my presentation is concluded, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Mr. Bryant, thank you very much. Are there questions for Seth? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve it? The transaction, I'm sorry.
I so move, Mrs. Farrell.
Beryl, thank you very much. Is there a second?
I'll second it now.
Thank you. Is that you, Brian?
Jerry?
Oh, Jerry, okay, I missed that. Jerry, thank you very much. It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll assume that was unanimous as well. Mr. President.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, behind tab 8 is the Turo College Obligated Group, a transaction summary and staff report with Matt Bergen presenting. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. President. The staff report provided to the members presents a 32-year term and an amount not to exceed $60 million on behalf of Turo College Obligated Group. The project that you're considering this afternoon, is a new money financing for the purchase and renovation of a 2-story condominium in a building in Manhattan to be used for administrative purposes as well as for renovations and equipment purchases at the New York Medical College campus. With regard to the purchase and renovations of the 2-story condominium, Turo College is currently paying an operating lease in Manhattan to accommodate these same functions, and it is anticipated that they will move these functions from the current lease building into the new condominium with the expectation that there will be annual savings associated with the financing of the new administrative space as opposed to remaining at the current location and continuing the lease payments. In addition, the various campus renovations and equipment purchases at the New York Medical College are mostly for energy efficiency improvements, including lighting and electrical control system upgrades, boiler plant replacements, and other mechanical and electrical upgrades that will result in potentially significant utility savings. With regard to their financials, for the third consecutive year, the net operating margin and the net income margin were both positive as its newer programs have developed and come online. For 2019, Turo is reporting a 1.3% operating margin and a net income margin of 1.4%. When looking at the staff report, we look at Turo in its entirety, as does the rating agency. And with regard to the non-designated enterprises, even though there is financial assistance provided to them, these non-designated enterprises do provide financial assistance back in terms of fundraising, and they are also looked at as feeder schools as they provide students to the other areas of Turo. When looking at the obligated group, it includes Turo College, Turo University, which is in California, Turo University, Nevada, and New York Medical College, and the obligated group was created in 2014. Historically, only certain divisions of Turo College have had their revenues and certain mortgages pledged. When looking at all of the designated enterprises of Turo College, Turo University, Nevada, and New York Medical College, they make up approximately 77% of the total revenues, 82% of the total assets, and 78% of the total liabilities of the system. As this is an obligated group structure, obligations issued under the master trust indenture will be a joint and several obligation of each member of the obligated group and will be further secured by lien on certain gross receipts and mortgages on certain real property. In addition, it is anticipated that there will be a debt service reserve fund. And to conclude, the expected ratings are BBB- from Fitch, and Turo College has met all of its required ratios and made all of its debt service payments on time and in full. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Matt. I meant to ask you earlier, how big is the debt service reserve fund anticipated to be, and what percentage of the annual debt payments will it cover?
Historically, it has been a 1-year debt service reserve fund.
Okay.
And, we are just going to look to the market to see what the market will require.
Fair enough. You're requesting an approval to proceed with the preparation of documents. And there was some discussion during the Finance Committee meeting, but I think it is agreed that at least the Finance Committee recommended this for approval of the board. So I'm going to ask for a motion to do so.
We had a caveat or two in there, Al, that you can just refer back to finance, but yes.
if you want to add them in now, Jerry, that's fine. But I think
All right, I'll just refer back.
If we reference back to the Finance Committee comments, and for the record, anybody who is interested can reference back to the Finance Committee comments, and I think that's probably good enough.
Good enough for me, thanks.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the reminder. May I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction? May I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction?
Russ Biggs.
Russ?
This is Wellington. Yeah.
Thank you. And the second?
Wellington Chen.
Wellington, thank you very much.
Point of order, Al.
Yes, Mike, is Russ, because he is not the primary representative?
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
We need
Russ, I'm sorry, it's not your fault. You have been the primary representative in the past, but we're going to actually have to ask somebody else to move.
Oh, well, I just figured because I had started the actual board meeting, and I know Tracy was there before, but I didn't know she was still, you know.
No harm, no foul. It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. I would have made the same assumption, Russ. And thank you very, very much, Michael, for correcting me. I appreciate it. May I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction?
I'll move.
Is that you, Joan?
It's Beryl. My voice.
Oh, it's
must
Beryl.
go on.
I'm sorry. I'm not very good with voices,
Good.
I
I'm
guess.
having a lower voice. I applaud myself. I'll move.
And the transaction, the motion was seconded by. Was it you, Wellington?
That's correct, Al.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, both of you, I just wanted to make sure that Mike had the right names in place. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think it's unanimous. Mr. President, you've got two tax-exempt leasing proposals to introduce.
If we have two TELP financials introduced and one final board action.
Oh,
so I'll
yes,
just
I'm
introduce
sorry, I
these
forgot that.
together. Yeah, I'll introduce these together. Behind tab 9 is Mary Imogene Bassett Hospital, and behind tab 10 is SUNY University Hospital at Syracuse. And Portia will introduce both of these. However, we need a separate resolution on each.
Of course.
Great, thank you, Ruben. So before the board for consideration is a TELP financing on behalf of Mary Imogene Bassett Hospital in an amount not to exceed $11.8 million. Current policy of the Public Authorities Control Board requires that TELP leases which exceed $10 million in a 12-month period be presented to both the Authority Board and PACB for approval. This TELP transaction will finance equipment included on the equipment list that was mailed to the board, including various IT and other equipment. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Portia. Are there any questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the proposed financing?
So moved.
Wellington?
Yes,
Yes,
that's correct.
Al.
Thank you. And Jerry, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Portia?
Great, yep. And the second TELP financing before the board for consideration is TELP financing on behalf of SUNY University Hospital at Syracuse in an amount not to exceed $23.7 million. As stated previously, current policy of the Public Authorities Control Board requires that TELP leases which exceed $10 million in a 12-month period be presented to both the Authority Board and the PACB for approval. This TELP transaction will finance equipment as shown on the attached equipment list, including various radiology, cardiac, and other equipment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Portia, thank you very much. Any questions for Portia? There being none.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, please.
This is Russ. Yeah, this is Russ Biggs. This so the board knows that both of those TELP transactions, you know, that I had looked at it before. They were kind of basically pre-approved even before this kind of whole situation from the Department of Health.
So the approval preceded the economic impact on these two hospitals of the corona
right
virus.
Before everything kind of happened, that we already had been looking at the TELPs in terms of the regulations and the rest of the stuff. So it had already gone through the process, and I was in conversations with Art Ware as well, but I had some email issues and things, so that some of that official paperwork didn't kind of maybe make it through its way yet.
So Russ, let's be clear. I don't hear you saying that there are issues with the two TELP transactions.
No,
You're
just
simply
that,
saying
just
that documents did not arrive in a timely way, but we'll get to where they need to get to.
Correct.
Okay, good. So there are no issues and no concerns with the.
There's no issues, no concerns. I just wanted to put that out there. Just he didn't get an official word from me other than verbally.
Okay, all right, fair enough, Russ, and thank you for letting us know that. May I have a motion, please, to approve the? I'm sorry, we've already approved the second TELP transaction, haven't we?
You have to vote.
Yes, all right, terrific.
Yeah.
Then, Mr. President, there's one
No,
last item on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe we actually voted on the SUNY University TELP.
All right, thank you for correcting me then. Are there any questions for Portia about
Yeah,
it?
this is, Al, this is John Johnson speaking. Just for the record, it should show that I'm a member of the Upstate Medical University Council. I see no reason to have to recuse myself, but just for the
Absolutely,
record.
but we'll rely on the general counsel's view. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Mike, you don't have any problems with this, do you?
No issues. Thank you very much for that disclosure, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. There being no questions, may I have a motion, please, to approve it?
So moved.
And that is Wellington. Thank you.
Wellington.
The second?
I'll
Is there-
second it's Beryl Snyder.
Thank you, Beryl. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 We'll assume it's unanimous, and thank you all very, very much. Now, Mike, you're going to present the declaration of intent resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before the board for consideration is a declaration of intent resolution that is similar in form and content to resolutions this board has passed previously in the mental hygiene as well as Department of Health arena. The purpose of this resolution is to address a federal tax limitation and allow the state to begin accruing COVID-19 related costs for potential reimbursement from the proceeds of subsequently issued tax-exempt bonds. As mentioned by Cam Wong during the PIT note financing presentation, these costs could include but not be limited to costs incurred in rehabilitating, repurposing, and equipping the facilities of SUNY, CUNY, and other agencies for emergency medical treatment space. The resolution does not create any obligation for DASNY to issue any bond, and any such authorization would occur at a later date. If approved, this resolution would simply open up a window for the state of New York to obtain reimbursement from the proceeds of tax-exempt bonds running from a time period that starts on or after February 8th, 2020, which under IRS rules is a date no more than 60 days prior to the date hereof, to ensure that these costs, to the extent allowable under the state finance law, may be reimbursed from tax-exempt state PIT or state sales tax revenue bonds. Bond counsel recommends that the attached declaration of official intent resolution be adopted at this time. Staff has reviewed this resolution and concurs, and I recommend adoption with no legal concerns. Thank you.
Mike, thank you. Are there questions for Michael? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the declaration of intent resolution?
I'm delighted, Beryl.
Beryl?
Yes.
Yes.
And you, okay, thank you. You've moved it, and someone seconded it.
Yeah, I did. Wellington.
Wellington, thank you. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. The next regular meeting is scheduled for the 6th of May in the New York offices. We all pray that might even be a possibility, but we wonder whether or not it can be under these circumstances. I want to thank Kim Nadeau and everybody who helped her for pulling these calls together today. An enormous task, I'm sure. And please, Kim, don't tell me how enormous it was. It's an extraordinary thing to be able to move an organization like this in these, as I say, impossible times. Yet we're doing it, and I think as a board we're doing it well. We have a terrific staff. We're fortunate to have a terrific staff, and we rely on them in ways that are probably inconceivable even to the staff, but we do. Thank you all for all that you're doing for DASNY. I'll close on a sour note. If you take a look at the front cover, the front page of the New York Times today, above the fold, there's a graphic on the left that is absolutely startling. It is just startling. And then on the right side, above the fold, there is a story that was predictable, and yet heartbreaking. Hard to read the article without getting teary-eyed. I commend them both to your attention, and I'll keep my fingers crossed and hope that you do that. May I have a motion, please, to adjourn?
I will so move. I'll move, but not before. I also recognize that today it was a record number of coronavirus deaths in the state of New York, and my heart goes out to everyone touched by that. I hope no one can ever say that about tomorrow or the next day. So let's
Thank
hope
you, Beryl.
where things will get better.
Well, they will.
Yeah.
They will. It's just a question
Yeah.
of time and how many more lives we lose as a direct result of this just unparalleled tragedy.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, I also want to know, this is
I'm sorry.
Wellington, so that you know, there is also quite a bit of undercounting and underreporting because according to governments and WNYC, compared to last year at this period, there should have been about 400 people died at home during these past 2 weeks. Instead, there was something over 2,000 people who died at home that are not counted in the official count.
Yeah, there are any number of reasons. I'm sorry, we're still on the record, but there are any number of reasons apparently for a failure to count a death that is actually attributable to the COVID-19. I don't understand them, and we're not going to resolve any of that here. I want to thank again everybody for your committed concern for the issues that DASNY has raised. I want to thank Ruben. I'm sorry, not the issues DASNY has raised, the transactions that DASNY has helped us to complete. And I want to thank Ruben again for your leadership. You're doing a great deal, and you're doing it over a short period of time. And as chair, I'll speak for the board. I think you're doing a terrific job. So keep it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I very much appreciate that, and the team's done a great job. So thank you so much.
All right, sir.
Yeah.
So did we pass the motion to adjourn?
Motion by Burrell, seconded by Wellington. It needs a vote.
Thank you very much, Mike. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye.
Everyone.
It passes unanimously. Everybody, stay safe and be well.
Stay safe, everybody. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.